too hot. It's too hot. Justin, it's too hot. My face is melting away. My face is melting away. Like the wicked witch of the west. Ah!
I've noticed that Fall Guys is a very good game, and I know that some brands have noticed it's not only good but also quite popular, and unlike Fortnite where they got on the train late, they want to get in on the ground floor. The brands are thirsty for Fall Guys. And I want in. I mean, it's not even for promotion or money or anything, I just really like attention. So can we have... I mean, you know, it would appeal to, you know, 0.3% of your player base, and the rest of them, the ones who hate me, you don't even have to tell them it's me! Anyway, do you remember The Last of Us Part 2? That game that came out like 10,000 years ago? Well, some people haven't forgotten. Well, there's a particular aspect of the game they haven't forgotten and haven't forgiven, because you see, there are muscles in The Last of Us Part 2. Lady muscles. And some of the comments I've been receiving whenever I've talked about this wonderful little topic have been so incredible they could only be delivered to you by a Georgian aristocrat. The character design of Abby sucks, and a majority of gamers agree. No amount of crying and whining you do will change that. Yeah, sorry that I don't like unattractive people. I don't like a muscular woman. It's a turn-off. Those arms are realistic. On a man! Sure, women can bulk up like this, but in reality it's far less common than having large breasts. Whatever. I was never in the target demographic for this game. Clearly not aimed at men who like feminine women. Royston! I decide what is sexy! Oh! Ooh! Ooh, yeah! The things that the gamers decide to be upset about will never not be fascinating. When I talk about the ways in which games are deliberately designed to manipulate and prey upon people, I'm told I'm beating a dead horse, even though literally nothing's been done about the problem of predatory monetization. In fact, it's only gotten worse, but I'm the one beating a dead horse. When I discuss the issue of very real men in very real life using their positions of power and authority to mentally and physically harm others, I'm shouted down for being too political. Seriously. But by the clammy wet hands of God, so help us all, when it comes to a woman in a mushroom zombie video game having big arms, it'll be an outrage that burns for months on end. Abby in The Last of Us Part 2 is proving to be one of the most controversial Abby in The Last of Us Part 2 is proving to be one of the most non-controversial video game characters of all time. To ordinary human beings with some sort of purpose in life, or at least more than one hobby, Abby is a protagonist in a video game. To the gamers TM, you know the ones I mean, she represents the downfall of the gaming medium. Proof positive that SJWs have taken over video games by erasing attractive women and replacing them with attractive women. She is, in their perpetually self-martyring worldview, yet another example of how real gamers, straight little white boys, are being ignored in favour of the non-real gamers, anyone who isn't a straight little white boy. In short, Abby is the final cuckening. Aerith Gaines, bro! A huge portion of the controversy is rooted in something so utterly, pitifully simple. They don't like that a non-conventionally attractive woman dared to be a playable character in a mainstream video game. And that is literally it for the vast majority of them. Oh, they'll dress it up. The whinging little lads who are still, weeks after launch, trying to invalidate Abby's existence as a character will try to tell you it's not about something so surface level, but it is. People hate Abby because she's reasonably muscular. And when I say reasonably muscular, that's the extent of it too. She is not, as some people who even like her described, super mega jacked. Maybe it's because I spend a lot of time working with actual professional wrestlers, but I see super jacked human frames on the regular. And Abby, while very clearly built up, is nowhere near the top when it comes to getting ripped to fuck, which of course is fine, be as built up as you want to be. But the way some people talk about it, it's like they've never seen muscles before. They talk about her like she's Brock fucking Lesnar. But she does put Naughty Dog's intricately animated weapon upgrade system to shame by having the sweetest guns in the game. And other gamers can't fucking handle it. Which is why, despite the rest of the world inevitably having moved on to the next hype-fueled AAA distraction, we still have a subset of hardcore gamer boy types who are diligently working to bust the myth that a muscular woman could be in their favourite video games. Spoilers time for early spoilers in The Last of Us Part 2 by Naughty Dog. Published by Sony. It's not like people weren't predisposed to hating Abby as her killing of the suddenly beloved video game character of Joel was, when news of the story leaked before launch, enough for many people to preemptively decide she was awful and refuse to ever see her perspective, which is hilarious when you consider what the game's narrative was desperately trying to do. But anyway, Joel was a shithead and a selfish character, and he was always going to meet a violent comeuppance. That he died horribly was a natural story beat. I've pointed this out before. That anybody felt otherwise is shocking to me. There's nothing about Joel that ain't loathsome. Even his fatherly character growth is rooted, as the end of the original game demonstrates, in self-interest. But some people treat him as if he was one of the all-time lovable protagonists. Even if you disagree with my read on the character, he wasn't fucking that. Some even talk about him like they're mourning a loved one, like he was their own father figure. And darling, let me tell you, if you look up to Joel from The Last of Us, well, you're probably exactly the kind of person who thinks it's okay to harass and stalk and attack a voice actor for something her character did to another character.
I don't give a single care about her. I just want my Joel to not be golfed to death.
And if you're that abusively disconnected from reality, hey, Ubisoft's hiring. We already discussed in a previous video how Abby's performer, Laura Bailey, has been attacked online by weird and fucked up Last of Us fans who have maybe spent too much of their squalid, rotten lives playing violent video games and can no longer discern fiction from reality. And while some of those still negatively obsessed with Abby will tell you their hate is rooted wholly in the character's actions within The Last of Us Part 2, even a cursory glance at the discourse will reveal that's all complete and total bollocks for most of them. Abby is not a traditionally, conventionally attractive video game character, and they despise her for it. You don't even have to look very hard to see their real problem with her. It all comes down to the muscles. At first, they tried to argue Abby wasn't a realistic portrayal of a woman simply because she was well built, and rather than acknowledge the existence of people outside of their tiny idea of what people can be, they decided it wasn't realistic that a woman could be so stacked. When it was pointed out that yes, women can get that swole and more besides, when it was pointed out that yes, the very woman Abby's design was based on was equally if not more muscular, the outraged gamers changed their tune. Now the popular argument persists. It's not that she can't be muscular, it's that she can't be muscular in The Last of Us Part 2. You see, the same group of status quo warriors who have spent years in this so-called culture war defending unrealistic body types is suddenly an arbiter of what is and isn't believable character design. After all the defenses of chainmail bikinis and everything Rob Liefeld did to artistic concepts of human proportion, suddenly the question of Abby's large arms in a mushroom zombie video game have turned every 2-bit gamer with a Twitter handle into an expert nutritionist who can scientifically argue that no women could get so hard in a post-apocalypse. You see, there's no food in a zombie apocalypse, so nobody can get the nourishment they need to build up their bodies to get muscles in the first place. That's logic that's suddenly been applied to a video game. I mean, sure, she's not even that extremely muscular and has no more meat on her than many of the men, but we're not here to question male body types, are we? Get out of here with that commie logic. And sure, we could say that in a game about mushroom zombies, the size of a character's arms aren't the biggest suspension of disbelief out there. But that kind of Bolshevism isn't going to get those cocks jerking, is it? And sure, there are supplement pills found in every drawer and cupboard that the protagonists chow down without hesitation. But that's just video game logic, and we shouldn't be looking for too much realism in a game? Yeah. Any reasonable person would be able to say, shut up, it's a video game. The reasonably muscular arms are among the more believable suspensions of disbelief in a mushroom zombie video game, and that's even if you think it's unrealistic in the first place. But that doesn't do enough to counteract the sheer hypocritical stupidity of a group of literal wankers who only ever shout realism when it's convenient, when they're trying to get an unconventional video game protagonist erased, or falsely claiming that black people weren't around in the olden days, which is why games set in medieval Europe should only have white characters. Idiots. What makes this situation so absolutely absurd is not just the fact that it's a mushroom zombie game and a pair of above average biceps are the least of the fiction, it's that even within the world of The Last of Us Part 2, Naughty Dog went out of its way to show that Abby actually does have access to regular meals and a fitness regimen. Narratively, of course, the game establishes that Abby spent the past few years specifically training herself physically for the task of wreaking revenge on Joel. On top of that, we see very early in the game that the settlement Abby lives in has a fully functional agricultural system. You know, farms and shit. She's eating fucking burritos partway through the game, just after asking what's for lunch to indicate that they have, if not a fully balanced diet, then certainly a diverse enough one to where they're eating different stuff. On top of all that, Abby's role in the settlement is a physical one. She goes out, patrols, hunts, fights, her entire job is physical. She is fed. And even if that's not enough to 100% explain how muscular she is, it's still more explanation than any other video game gives for any other body type in any other fucking video game, and it's still just a fucking video game. And The Last of Us Part 2 did so much visual and literary legwork here that disbelief should be more than fully suspendable unless you're actively trying to be upset, which, let's be honest, is what the people still performing their crusade for realism are. I mean, how else do you explain this almost deliciously audacious stretch where one highly educated doctor found Abby's in-game workout schedule and used it as proof that Abby shouldn't exist? The schedule, by the way, is not a major plot point or anything. It's not anything. It's a background asset, something cobbled together for the scenery like background assets are, and it was by no means intended to be paid attention to. But wankless wonders, starved for anything vaguely resembling a bullet for their logic gun, people who must have been scouring the game for weeks trying to find anything to back up their laughable anger, have leapt on this throwaway meaningless asset as if it's pure argumentative dynamite. The image shows she does not work on her arms to the capacity an average woman would need to. Thursdays, 4 times every 2 months. Additionally, food is rationed. That's where we are with this shit. Some boys out there are so eager, so frothingly, gleefully eager to invalidate the existence of even a fictional woman that they're hunting down background images and zooming in and enhancing them like they're in a Tom Clancy fucking book. And all because, despite their sudden and convenient interest in realism, a group of gamers don't find this girl as attractive as other fictional girls. Some have suggested that these particular gamer boy types get violently distressed if they encounter someone they don't want to masturbate to, and that indeed
pumping out a fat load
is what this is all about. And I'm not saying that's definitely what's going on. But anyway, here's a couple quotes about Abby we found with minimal effort on The Last of Us' subreddit.
If there's no Rule 34 of Abby, does that mean she doesn't exist? No one will make lewds of her. There is R34 of her in the fucking game itself. Let's not talk about that scene. If I was drunk enough, I'd not do it. I'm sure people with muscle fetishes would be very happy. I wonder what Rule 34 will do with Abby. I have my eye bleach ready. This is no Pornhub. We don't post Sex.
Yes, of course, there's a transphobic slur tossed in there, because Abby has muscles, you see, and no muscle girl be allowed in-game for real big grown-up man. The very fact Abby isn't skinny and or curvy automatically made her a man in some people's heads, and while I don't like to churlishly throw around people's dating success or lack thereof, I genuinely wonder what some of these people think actual women look like. Because some people do look like the people they find attractive, but that's only a percentage of the makeup of the human range of body types. I mean, look at the extreme example I set. But some gamers out there seem to believe that women can only look and, let's be honest, behave one way. And when you see them clutching pearls over Tifa's breast size being altered in Final Fantasy VII Remake, or screaming furious vengeance because a drawing of a girl's panties aren't as visible on American game packaging as it is in Japan, it's difficult not to assume that these poor miscreants must be so utterly, crushingly desperate for an actual range of human interaction. Or at least in need of something different to jerk off to. Not necessarily better stuff, just more varied stuff. More than just Rule 34. There's so much more stuff to look at when you're pounding it. When you're pounding it. When you're pounding. Just where were all these people when Gears of War gave us men who were 90% pure grade A beef fortress after a 14-year-long war that devastated the planet's resources and decimated the population? Where the fuck were they during the release of Borderlands, and Borderlands 2, and Borderlands the pre-sequel, and Tales from the Borderlands, and Borderlands 3, where all the starved inhabitants of a dead desert world make Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson look like this prick? Hell, where were all these people telling Lord Humongous that he was just too fucking ripped? You know, I'm racking my brain trying to think of the last time anyone had an issue with muscles being in a video game, and nothing springs to mind. Here's the thing. As a dude, I actually fell into this trap a little bit, writes Forbes' Paul Tassi in an article that gets to the meat of the matter. Not like in an angry way, but I did keep waiting for some sort of story explanation as to why Abby had gotten so jacked. But it was never directly addressed outside of one line about how she had just lifted a certain weight for the first time. But then when I stopped and thought about it, I realised, when had I ever asked that question about a male character? Or needed an explanation as to why they were unrealistically jacked? Way more unrealistically than Abby usually. Never. It's just assumed as video game default that men are jacked with huge muscles, and if women are muscular, they are also skinny. And yet it's perfectly reasonable to think that a woman living in the post-apocalypse on a mission of revenge would indeed get super jacked to be able to take on zombie hordes and enemy soldiers alike. There really isn't any explanation past that needed. Once I saw a social media movement of other muscular women showing off their arms that looked close to identical to Abby's, I realised I was being dumb for even thinking about this as a story point that needed to be addressed. No, I wasn't vocally mad about it online, and yet my own bias has made me internally question whether Abby's appearance was right. That was stupid. Yep, he's correct. It is stupid. Because no matter who you are watching this right now, you can claim that you'd have been just as skeptical if Abby were a man, but the fact is you wouldn't be, because you haven't been. You've had chances before now to show that skepticism, my friend, in many, many post-apocalyptic worlds full of dieseled men, and only now, only with Abby, do people suddenly care. People who, until now, were among the most likely to excuse a game's shittiness by claiming it's just a game. Well, shut the fuck up, kids, because The Last of Us 2 is just a game. Not even a particularly great one. I mean, it's good, it's fun, it's a fun zombie game, but it's just a fun zombie game. I'm being very insulting today, and that's in part because trying to debate this issue on the facts is relatively pointless. The fact is, Abby exists. Whether it's believable or not, she's got big arms in a mushroom zombie video game, and she's not going to disappear if you somehow prove she couldn't exist in The Last of Us 2's world. She does, whether you like it or not. Finding a workout regimen that was never intended to be so much as thought about for more than a second will not resurrect your precious beloved Joel. The Last of Us 2 came out ages ago, sold a shit ton, and you can't change that. None of us can change it. I know your experience in erasing black people from European history has allowed you to believe you can alter the past, but you actually can't. What's past is prologue, folks. Abby happened whether you like it or not, and it's time to move on. And I'm simply not going to pretend there's an actual valid reason for disliking Abby's existence. Dislike the character, dislike the story, but when you're debating that the character can't exist, especially when she's not even in the top 10 least believable aspects of the game, I'm gonna side-eye you. You're trying to say women with certain body types shouldn't be in games, that women with only one or two particular body types should be. And the hateful comments, sexually sneering attitudes, and clinging desperation to scrub out Abby's entire presence betrays that motive far greater than you think any video game has betrayed you because it had a woman with muscles or pink hair. You fucking babies. I realise I've been more than a little antagonistic with today's video, and some people would argue you shouldn't be antagonistic, you'll only rile them up. But what are the other options when you're as exhausted as I am, you know? You could ignore them. That's not very good. You could try and debate their points as if they have merit, but they don't. And what can I tell you? I am an open pansexual queer whose relationship with their gender, especially recently, has been a little... He's right, you know. This is as manly as it gets around here. And I've gotten very fucking used to spending a large portion of my life being told I literally don't exist. By the media, by people in my life. And I've got friends who are being, just having their very human rights debated by TERFs, galvanised as they are by the likes of Graham Linehan and J.K. Rowling, who is a TERF, by the way. By the way, I do understand that I've offended some viewers in the past by saying that J.K. Rowling is a TERF. I'm just very tired of seeing the right to be different debated. You know? It's very tiresome to see even fictional people's existences disputed when she's there in the video game. Does it not make sense in the universe for that character to have those muscles? Well, it makes sense in that universe because that's in a universe where clearly Abby does look the way she looks, so... It's not a debate. You know, some of the comments we've looked at here, some of the comments I've seen continue to sprout and spew forth from people's diseased mouths, are still literally trying to claim that muscular women don't exist, or are certainly such unicorn-esque rarities that they shouldn't be seen in a video game. And that's what it all comes down to. These people shouldn't be seen, and these people shouldn't be heard. If they're not the absolute bog-standard factory default setting protagonist, then gamers don't want them to be around. They will scream about, oh, forced diversity, when they see just a shred of diversity. Games are less diverse than real life is. You tell me what's being forced, you know? But look at me, accidentally falling into the trap of trying to seriously debate people who claim they want debate, but actually don't give a fuck. They're just very scared of things that are different. And that's why they don't thank God for me, even though they should. Or at the very least, they should thank God that Joel died, because he was shit. He was shit.